Year 3, after we crossed 300 million. Victor, we need to discuss equity. I've been here 3 years. Built the entire platform. No ownership stake. You're absolutely right. Let's schedule that after this quarter. Once the Horizon deal closes, we'll formalize everything. The Horizon deal closed. 6 months passed. No conversation. I raised it again. After the next board meeting, Victor said. The board wants to discuss compensation structures generally. Next board meeting came and went. I wasn't included. The pattern was clear. Equity discussions happened after the next milestone. Always the next one. Never this one. I stopped raising it directly. Started documenting the promises instead. Building a record. 3 weeks before my firing, I raised serious concerns. The platform was scaling beautifully, but governance was lacking. No formal change management. No approval structures for system modifications. Engineers could deploy changes without oversight. Victor, we need to implement proper governance around the platform. Change approval processes. Architecture review boards. He looked annoyed. Why? Everything's working fine. It's working because we're small and disciplined. As we scale, informal processes break. Structure slows us down. We're winning because we move fast. We're winning because the platform is stable. Moving fast without governance creates risk. What kind of risk? Unauthorized changes could break core functionality. We need formal authority chains. That sounds like bureaucracy. It's how you protect 300 million in revenue. Victor shook his head. This is fear-based thinking. We need people who believe in momentum. I'm not afraid of speed. I'm concerned about protecting what we've built. Maybe that's the problem. You're focused on protection. I need people focused on growth. The conversation ended tensely. 3 weeks later, he fired me. The termination email arrived at 11:34 p.m. the night of my firing. Formal legal language. This decision reflects organizational restructuring to reduce dependency on individual contributors and build more resilient team structures. Reduce dependency on individuals. Framed my firing as organizational health. Like removing me made the company stronger. I read it 3 times. Then I opened my employment contract. Standard at-will language. But buried in Appendix C was a clause I'd negotiated during hiring. System modification authority for core platform architecture shall require certification from original architect or designated successor with documented knowledge transfer and board approval. I'd insisted on that language because I'd seen what happened when companies let anyone modify critical systems. The clause was protection for the platform. For the company. Victor had fired me. But he hadn't designated a successor. Hadn't transferred authority formally. Which meant nobody could modify the platform legally without my approval. And I was no longer employed to give that approval. I didn't call lawyers or send angry emails. I simply acknowledged the termination formally. I acknowledge receipt of separation notice. Please confirm transition responsibilities and timeline for knowledge transfer activities. HR responded within hours. Your responsibilities conclude with your termination date. No formal transition activities are required. I responded carefully. However, contractual language in Appendix C of my employment agreement specifies system modification authority requiring original architect certification. Please confirm succession planning for this authority transfer to ensure operational continuity. Silence for 2 days. Then legal called. We received your email about authority transfer. Yes. Appendix C language is clear about certification requirements. We believe that language is procedural rather than restrictive. The contract doesn't specify procedural versus restrictive. It specifies requirements. Requirements that haven't been met. Are you suggesting you retain authority post-termination? I'm suggesting the contract specifies requirements that haven't been completed. I'm no longer employed. Therefore, I have no authority. But neither does anyone else without proper succession planning. He hung up frustrated. But I'd made my point clear. Documentation matters. Contracts matter. Over the next week, I watched from outside. LinkedIn showed Radiant was hiring engineering positions. Senior architect roles. Victor was trying to replace me quickly. My former team members reached out privately. Things are chaotic. Nobody knows who has authority to approve changes. Half the roadmap is frozen. I responded professionally. That's a governance question. Suggest escalating to leadership. They're saying you're blocking progress. I'm not blocking anything. I'm terminated. I have no authority. That's the problem. Day 10 post-termination, a production issue emerged. Minor anomaly in automated monitoring. Normally, I'd have patched it in 15 minutes. But the patch required modifying core architecture, which required certification I no longer provided. The engineering team tried deploying anyway. The system rejected the change. Built-in safeguards I designed. Changes to core modules required cryptographic authorization tied to my credentials, which had been revoked when I was terminated. The system was protecting itself. Exactly as designed. My former team lead called. Lawrence, we're stuck. The monitoring patch won't deploy. Says authorization required. That's correct. Core architecture changes require certification. Can you provide that? I'm terminated. I have no authority to certify anything. So how do we fix this? You escalate to leadership. Request formal succession planning per contractual requirements. Once documented, new authority can be established. How long will that take? Depends on how quickly legal and the board move. Weeks probably. We need this fixed now. Then you have a governance problem that should have been addressed before my termination. Day 15. Engineering teams hit multiple blockers. Routine updates couldn't deploy. Client feature requests stalled. Roadmap initiatives froze. All because modifications required authorization nobody had. Victor scheduled an all-hands. We're experiencing temporary delays due to transition complexities. Engineering is working to resolve governance bottlenecks. Temporary delays. Governance bottlenecks. Corporate language obscuring that he'd fired me without planning succession. One engineer asked directly, "Is this related to Lawrence's departure?" Lawrence's separation was planned organizational restructuring. Current delays are procedural, not personnel-related. The lie was smooth, but employees understood cause and effect. Day 22, legal reached out. Raymond, you, less confident than last time. We'd like to discuss system governance continuity. I'm listening. We're prepared to offer a limited consulting arrangement to facilitate transition. Transition to whom? We're designating a successor architect, Michael Torres. But they need your certification per contractual language. Michael was talented, but he'd been with the company 18 months. Understood implementation. Didn't understand foundational architecture. Michael's good, but certification requires comprehensive knowledge transfer. That takes time. How much time? Months. Architecture this complex isn't transferred through documentation. It requires working together. The all-hands meeting ended at 3:47 p.m. with thunderous applause. Our founder, Victor Crane, stood on the small stage beaming as he announced the numbers. $520 million in profit this fiscal year. From bankruptcy 4 years ago to this. Employees cheered. Some cried. I stood in the back, hands in pockets, watching. Victor's eyes found me briefly, nodded once, then looked away. At 3:52 p.m., his assistant appeared beside me. Lawrence, Victor would like to see you in his office. I followed her upstairs while celebration continued below. Victor's office overlooked the parking lot. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Minimalist furniture. Awards on shelves. He was already seated. Close the door, Lawrence. I sat across from him. He didn't waste time. I'm letting you go. Effective immediately. This isn't performance-related. It's strategic restructuring to reduce dependency on individual contributors. I stared at him. 5 minutes ago, he'd been celebrating profits my software generated. He slid a folder across the desk. Termination paperwork. Thank you for everything you've done. The timing wasn't coincidence. Fire me during celebration so the news gets buried in success. I walked out at 4:08 p.m. Celebration still happening downstairs. Music playing. Champagne bottles opening. I descended slowly, moved through the crowd. Colleagues smiled. Raised glasses. Great year, Lawrence. They didn't know the person who built the core system had just been removed from it. I smiled, nodded, kept walking. Out the front doors. Across the parking lot to my car. Behind me, the building hummed with celebration. I sat in my car and pulled out my phone. 17 unread messages. Congratulations from team members. My corporate email was already bouncing. Access revoked 4 minutes after termination. I opened my personal email and started documenting. Time of firing. Victor's exact words. The juxtaposition of celebration and termination. Everything time-stamped. Because documentation matters. Especially when people try to rewrite history. At home, my wife Natalie was cooking dinner. She looked up when I entered. You're early. How was the announcement? Victor fired me. She dropped the spoon. What? Right after the all hands. Said it's about reducing dependency on individuals. You built everything they have. I know. But my mind was already working. 4 years of building systems teaches you to think in dependencies. In failure points. In what breaks when key components are removed. 4 years earlier, I joined Radiant Technologies on a Friday in March. The company was dying. Victor had founded it 3 years before with venture capital and ambitious vision. Enterprise software for supply chain optimization. But execution was catastrophic. The platform crashed constantly. Clients were leaving. Revenue was non-existent. The engineering team was gone, quit or fired. The codebase was a disaster held together by hope and temporary fixes. Victor's last meeting with investors had gone poorly. They'd given him 90 days to show progress or they'd liquidate. I need someone who can rebuild our platform completely, Victor said during my interview. We have 90 days or we're done. I reviewed the codebase that weekend. Worse than described. Not fixable through patches. Needed complete architectural redesign. I can rebuild it, I told him Monday. But it'll take total authority over technical decisions. No interference. No shortcuts. You'll have it. Just save the company. I started that week. No fancy office. Just a laptop in a corner of the nearly empty headquarters. Those first 6 months were brutal. I worked alone mostly, writing code in a rented apartment because the office was too chaotic. The original platform had tried to do everything. I stripped it to core functions. Built new architecture from foundation up. Modular. Scalable. Documented. Every night until 2 a.m. Every weekend. Building what should have taken a team a year. I finished the core platform in 4 months. Clean code. Proper structure. Built to scale. We deployed quietly. First client was a mid-sized manufacturer who'd threatened to leave. I migrated them personally. It worked perfectly. Second client. Same process. By month 6, we had 8 clients running on the new platform. 0 crashes. Response times improved 93%. Victor was ecstatic. You saved us. The platform is stable. Now we can grow. He hired 3 engineers. I trained them on the architecture. By year 1, we had 23 clients. Revenue was positive. Investors stopped threatening liquidation. Year 2, 70 clients. Year 3, 200 clients. $500 million in annual recurring revenue. We'd gone from bankrupt to profitable because the system worked. The software didn't just stabilize operations. It exposed inefficiencies nobody had seen before. Automated monitoring caught problems before they became critical. The system learned and adapted. Victor loved showing dashboards to investors. Clean metrics, upward trends, proof of turnaround. But he never mentioned how it worked. Never explained the architecture. Never credited the decisions that made it possible. Our platform revolutionized supply chain optimization, he'd say in pitch meetings. Our platform. Like it appeared through vision alone. By year 3, Victor hired a PR firm. Started doing interviews. The story became about his leadership. His resilience through near bankruptcy. His vision for the future. My name appeared occasionally in technical documentation. Never in the narrative. I didn't care initially. I was building. That mattered more than credit. But as profits climbed and my role stayed invisible, something shifted. I started noticing the gap between reality and story. Between who built the system and who claimed it. During all-hands meetings, Victor would present roadmaps I'd designed. This is where we're going, he'd say confidently. Without mentioning who figured out how to get there. Year 3, the company went from profitable to explosive. We closed massive enterprise deals. Fortune 500 clients. Revenue hit 300 million, then 400. Victor's profile rose. Industry conferences invited him to speak. Publications wrote features about the turnaround. From bankruptcy to industry leader. How Victor Crane built Radiant Technologies. Articles quoted his philosophy, his leadership approach, his strategic thinking. My contribution was summarized in single sentences. Strong technical team, or robust engineering capabilities. I was infrastructure. Invisible. Essential but unmentioned. One article interviewed Victor about the near bankruptcy period. What saved the company? Belief, Victor said. Refusing to accept failure. Finding the right people and empowering them to execute the vision. Finding the right people. Like I'd been discovered rather than deliberately hired. Empowering them to execute the vision. Like the architecture I designed was implementation of his plan. I read that article 3 times. Each time, the gap between truth and narrative grew wider. But I said nothing. The work mattered. The system mattered. Credit was ego. Compensation discussions were always deferred. Year 1, Victor promised equity. Once we stabilize, we'll formalize ownership stakes for key contributors. We stabilized. No equity discussion. Year 2, I raised it directly. Soon. Let's get through Series B fundraising first. We closed Series B. Still no equity. We don't have months. Clients are waiting. Then you have a planning problem. One that should have been addressed before my termination. Are you willing to provide consulting services? Under proper terms, yes. What terms? Formal engagement contract. Market rate compensation. $800 per hour. Minimum 20-hour weekly commitment. Silence. That's excessive. That's the rate for specialized expertise in critical transitions. You're welcome to find alternatives. He hung up. Day 30, the situation escalated publicly. A major client, Northbridge Manufacturing, reported processing delays. Their supply chain optimization was running slower than baseline. Investigation showed the monitoring anomaly from day 10 was cascading. What started as minor inefficiency had compounded over 3 weeks. Northbridge's COO escalated directly to Victor. We're experiencing degraded performance. What's the issue? Temporary technical delays. Being resolved. When? We're working to establish timeline. This is affecting our operations. We need resolution immediately. We understand the urgency. I'm giving you 1 week. If performance isn't restored, we're invoking contractual penalties. Northbridge was Radiant's largest client. $30 million annually. Losing them would devastate the company. Other clients started asking questions. Industry observers noticed. Articles appeared. Radiant Technologies experiencing technical difficulties following personnel changes. Victor's PR machine went into overdrive. Statements about minor technical adjustments. But the narrative was shifting. From triumphant success story to company with problems. All because he'd fired me without planning. Day 32, my phone rang. Victor's number. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Lawrence, it's Victor. We need to talk. I'm listening. This situation is untenable. We need to resolve authorization issues immediately. I've offered consulting terms through legal. $800 per hour is extortion. $800 per hour is market rate for emergency expertise. You're welcome to verify with other consultants. You built this system. You have a responsibility. I built the system while employed. You terminated that employment. Responsibility ended with termination. Don't be vindictive about this. I'm being professional. You want expertise. Expertise has cost. Silence stretched. What would it take to resolve this faster? I'd been waiting for this question. The desperation point where Victor realized he needed me more than pride mattered. 2 options. 1. Formal knowledge transfer over 3 to 4 months. Michael gets properly certified. Or 2. Emergency consulting. I return under limited scope. Provide immediate authorization for critical fixes. Stabilize the system. But no knowledge transfer. What would that cost? $600 per hour. 4 weeks minimum. The consulting contract arrived within 6 hours. Rushed. Legal language sloppy from speed. But core terms were clear. Emergency consulting engagement. $600 per hour. 4-week minimum. I reviewed carefully. Added 1 clause ensuring I retained no long-term authority post-engagement. Legal accepted without argument. Credentials arrived 20 minutes later. Full system access restored. I logged in and reviewed current state. The cascade was worse than I'd thought. 3 weeks of compounding issues. I spent 4 hours that night untangling it. Deployed proper fix. Certified the change. Monitoring returned to baseline within hours. Next morning, I addressed stalled client features. Reviewed each proposed change. Certified the ones that were safe. Rejected the ones that would cause problems. By day 3 of consulting, the crisis was contained. Northbridge's performance returned to normal. Stalled initiatives resumed. Victor called. The clients are satisfied. This is working. For now. But you still need long-term succession planning. We'll address that after this engagement. You should address it during. For weeks isn't enough time for proper knowledge transfer, but it's enough to start. Focus on immediate issues. We'll handle long-term planning separately. I knew better than to argue. He'd learn. Again. Week 2 of consulting, Victor called frustrated. Why is progress still slower than before you left? Because I'm authorizing changes, not driving architecture decisions. There's a difference. What difference? When I was employed, I understood context, anticipated needs, designed solutions proactively. Now I'm reactive. So come back permanently. No. Why not? We're paying you more as consultant than as employee. Money isn't the issue. Trust is. What does that mean? You fired me 5 minutes after celebrating profits I helped create. Told the success story without mentioning who built the foundation. Deferred equity discussions for 3 years. Then removed me when I raised governance concerns. I made a mistake. You made calculated decisions. Those decisions revealed how you view technical contributors. As replaceable implementation resources rather than essential partners. I'm trying to fix this. You're trying to restore functionality. That's different than fixing underlying problems. What would fixing underlying problems look like? Written recognition of contributions. Formal equity grant reflecting 4 years of building. Public acknowledgement that platform success came from architecture, not just vision. That's asking for credit. That's asking for truth. Week 3, I received unexpected email from the board. Subject: confidential discussion request. The board would like to schedule time with you to discuss system architecture and organizational continuity. This conversation would be separate from your current consulting engagement. I called the board chair, Catherine Morrison. You're requesting discussion outside normal company channels? Yes. The board has concerns about platform stability and succession planning that aren't being adequately addressed through current leadership. What kind of concerns? We're troubled by how your departure was handled and the resulting operational disruption. We'd like to understand technical dependencies and what's required for long-term stability. We scheduled a call for the following day. I prepared thoroughly. Technical assessment, architecture documentation, risk analysis, succession requirements. The call lasted 90 minutes. I walked them through the platform's architecture, explained dependencies, knowledge gaps, risks of inadequate succession. How long would proper knowledge transfer take? Catherine asked. 4 to 6 months. Working closely with successor. Teaching not just implementation but architectural thinking. What would you recommend? Invest in proper transition. Give them dedicated time working with me. Build institutional knowledge that survives individual departures. Another board member asked, would you be willing to return permanently to lead this transition? Not under current terms. What terms would you require? Equity stake reflecting contributions. Formal governance role. Authority that can't be unilaterally removed. Written acknowledgement of architectural ownership. That's substantial. The platform is substantial. It generated $520 million in profit. I built it from bankruptcy. Substantial contribution deserves substantial recognition. They thanked me for candor. Said they'd discuss recommendations. 2 days later, Catherine called back. The board is recommending significant changes to how technical leadership is structured and compensated. In the interim, would you be willing to extend your consulting engagement? Under what terms? Your rate. Expanded scope to include formal knowledge transfer. Timeline you determine based on actual progress. And Victor's position on this? The board is recommending this. Victor's position is secondary to board direction. I understood. The board was asserting authority. I'll accept board-directed engagement, with clear documentation that this is board decision, not Victor's request. Understood. We'll formalize it. The revised contract came from board counsel. Different tone. Different terms. Consulting engagement for platform knowledge transfer and architecture governance, directed by board of directors. Compensation $600 per hour. Authority to recommend organizational changes and succession planning. I signed. Immediately, dynamics changed. Victor called, tense. The board is overstepping. The board is governing. That's their role. They're undermining my authority. They're protecting company assets. Your decision to fire me without succession planning put that asset at risk. They're correcting that. You're driving this. I'm responding to outreach. The board came to me. I didn't lobby them. What did you tell them? The truth. That platform stability requires proper knowledge transfer. That your approach was inadequate. That I'd tried raising these concerns before termination and was fired for it. He hung up angry, but the power dynamic had shifted. Board authority superseded CEO preference. Over the next month, I worked directly with Michael Torres. Real knowledge transfer. Deep architectural education. I walked him through every major system. Explained design decisions. Michael was smart. Asked good questions. Actually wanted to understand. By week 16, I certified him. Formal documentation to the board. They approved. Michael had authority. The system could evolve without me. My consulting engagement was ending. 4 months total. The platform was stable. Michael was certified. Catherine called. The board has discussed next steps. We'd like to formalize a longer-term relationship. Permanent role. Chief Technology Officer. Board seat. Equity grant. Full authority over technical strategy. It was everything I'd asked for. I appreciate the offer. But I'm not interested. Why not? Because the underlying culture hasn't changed. Victor still runs the company. The board can intervene on specific issues. But day to day, he still controls narrative. I don't want to return to being invisible even with better title and compensation. What if Victor wasn't CEO? I paused. Is that being considered? There are discussions about organizational leadership given recent events. But I can't share details. If leadership changes, I'd reconsider. But not under current structure. Can we keep that option open? Yes. But I'm moving forward with other opportunities. 3 days later, industry news broke. Victor Crane steps back from day-to-day operations at Radiant Technologies, transitions to chairman role. Board appoints new CEO. Translation: the board had pushed him out of operational control. Consequences of firing me had damaged his credibility. The new CEO, Margaret Chen, called within a week. I've reviewed the situation thoroughly. I'd like to discuss your relationship with Radiant going forward. I'm listening. First, I want to apologize on behalf of the company. How your departure was handled was wrong. You built the foundation of our success and weren't properly recognized or compensated. I appreciate that acknowledgement. Second, I'd like to make a formal offer. Chief Technology Officer. Equity grant of 2% fully vested. Board observer seat. Complete authority over technical strategy. Compensation reflecting your contributions. That's generous. It's overdue. You should have received equity years ago. The board agrees this is corrective justice. What about Victor? Victor is chairman but has no operational authority. You'd report directly to me and the board. And public recognition? We'll issue statement about platform success crediting you as original architect. She was addressing everything I'd wanted. Everything Victor had denied. I'm interested. But why now? Why after everything that happened? Because the board learned an expensive lesson. Technical excellence isn't optional infrastructure. It's core competitive advantage. We nearly destroyed that advantage through poor leadership decisions. I called Margaret back after discussing with my wife. I'll accept with 2 modifications. First, the equity grant vests immediately, not over time. I've already earned it through 4 years of building. Agreed. Second, I want Victor's formal acknowledgement in writing that the platform's success came from architecture I created. Specific acknowledgement. That might be difficult. That's my requirement. I'll return and contribute going forward. But I won't do it while Victor continues claiming credit for work he didn't do. The record needs correcting. Margaret was quiet. I'll discuss with the board and Victor. Give me 48 hours. 2 days later, she called back. We have your acknowledgement. Victor has signed a statement for company records and public filing that the platform architecture was designed and built by you, that its success is directly attributable to that architecture, and that his previous communications inadequately recognized your contributions. Is it public? It will be filed with our quarterly board documentation, available to shareholders and public record. That's sufficient. We formalized everything over the next week. Employment contract with equity grant. Board documentation. Public statement about my role. Victor's acknowledgement. All documented. Protected. Real. I started the following Monday. Different office. Actual leadership authority. Team reporting to me. Victor avoided me initially. Awkward encounters in hallways. 3 weeks in, He requested a meeting. We sat in a conference room. Tension palpable. I wanted to say something, he started. I was wrong. About how I handled your termination. About taking credit for your work. About deferring equity. All of it. I appreciate you saying that. I got caught up in the success. Started believing my own narrative. Forgot that the foundation came from your work, not my vision. Vision matters. But implementation matters more. I know that now. Cost me operational authority to learn it. We sat in silence briefly. Then he stood. Extended his hand. I hope we can work together effectively going forward. I shook it. We can. With clear boundaries and mutual respect. He nodded and left. It wasn't redemption. But it was acknowledgement. Over the following months, I rebuilt technical leadership properly. Hired senior architects. Created governance structures. Implemented the oversight I'd advocated for before termination. The platform continued scaling with proper process. I mentored Michael, built a team that could sustain the platform without me. Succession planning done right. 1 year after my termination and return, we crossed billion-dollar valuation. Press coverage mentioned the platform's technical sophistication. Articles interviewed me about architectural decisions. My name appeared in the success story where it belonged. During the valuation announcement, Margaret gave a speech. This milestone represents 4 years of building from near bankruptcy. That building was led by our technical architecture, created by Lawrence Keaton. We're here because of vision combined with exceptional execution. Both matter. It was the acknowledgement I'd wanted years ago. Better late than never. 2 years after my return, I planned my eventual transition. Proper succession over 6 months. When I left, it was celebrated. Victor and I had a final conversation. You changed this company, he said. We built this company. I handled architecture. You handled growth. Both mattered. But I nearly destroyed it by not recognizing that. You learned. The company is stronger for it. What's next for you? Other opportunities. Maybe building something new. Haven't decided. Whatever you do, you'll succeed. Because you understand that systems require foundation. And you build foundations better than anyone I've known. I left Radiant with equity worth $8 million. With reputation as architect who'd built platform from bankruptcy to billion-dollar valuation. With the record corrected about who built the foundation. Victor had learned that lesson expensively. Sometimes the best outcome comes from forcing people to acknowledge truth.